It is November 20, 2014. I'm Rene Ritchie, and right now we're going to talk about WatchKit, we're going to talk about getting apps on the App Store, and we're going to talk about everything that's happened in Apple this week. This is the iMore Show. Joining me today, we have a monster who has just admitted in public that he actually likes chocolate chip raisin cookies, and I don't know how to handle this. Peter, how are you doing?
Oatmeal raisin.
Oatmeal raisin.
That's even worse. Even worse.
At least you don't have the chocolate to balance it out that way. Ugh.
I'm doing well, Rene. How are you?
Good. Can we at least agree as gentlemen that raisins are undead grapes?
Yeah, and I've got no problem with that at all.
You're basically having zombies swimming around in your stomach. Is that why you had to go in for surgery?
It's true.
So you're doing well now, Peter?
I am. Thank you very much. I was not with us last week because I had to go under the knife, but I'm feeling much better this week.
And you said the xenomorph as well?
Yes, the xenomorph lives in a jar on a shelf over my desk, so I can look at it whenever I want and say hello to it.
It was heartwarming that Jim Dalrymple expressed such care and concern for your condition this morning.
Yes, indeed.
Also joining us, we have a woman who will brook no raisins. No raisins, I tell you. Ali Kazmuha.
Hello. I will not ever...
Before the show that you were going to rage quit because of Peter's cookie fascination.
No, I said we were going to make Peter rage quit.
Oh, rage. All right.
Yes.
Yes, Ali threatened to fire me.
Yeah.
For good reason.
So gross.
So, Ali, how are you doing? Are you frozen solid in Midwestern stand already?
It's getting a little bit warmer. I think it's supposed to be almost 50 this weekend. So, I know you don't even know what that means up in Canada.
Yeah, I do. 50 is super hot. I could melt things at 50. That's half the way to the boiling point.
I don't know what that is in Celsius.
Celsius is so easy.
18?
0 is frozen and 100 is boiling.
So,
like 17?
Yeah.
Somewhere
15
around there.
18.
Yeah. I know ranges. That's about as good as I can get.
Serenity, like Mr. Spock, is from two worlds, so she has to keep all these numbers in her head.
Surprisingly, my Celsius is not as good as it was when I was a child. I just don't think about, like, I know that 30 is hot, and I know that 5 or below is cold, but the in between is always a question mark.
Yeah, 20 is like comfortable. I think most people would agree 20 is comfortable.
20 is like 80 here, I want to say.
That's a little, well, we live in a humid climate, so 80's kind of, I like 70, 75, and anything more than that, it's too humid and sticky and gross.
If only we had widgets and apps that would,
that could auto-convert.
I don't think Apple allows those.
I take a quick break so I can tell you about lynda.com. Lynda.com is an easy and affordable way to help you learn, to instantly stream thousands of courses created by experts on software, web development, photography, graphic design, and more. Lynda is, I've said this multiple times and I stand by it, lynda.com is the closest thing we have right now to actually plugging into the matrix and injecting knowledge right into our brain. There's fresh content all the time. New courses are added daily. They're done by industry experts. They're done by software companies. They're done by the people who you want to learn from. They are provided in a timely manner. Anytime something new comes out, lynda.com has it same day, if not right thereafter. If you want to learn the latest version of Photoshop, it's right there. If you want to learn more about Yosemite, more about iOS 8, it's right there for you. It's beginner courses. There's expert courses. Whether you want to learn a new skill or you want to take your existing skill to a higher level, Lynda can help you with that. They've got great tools, includes transcripts, playlists, certificates of course completion, and you can learn on the go. They have mobile apps for iPhone, for iPad, and for Android. It's also all at one low price. $25 a month gives you access to over 100,000 video tutorials. That is more tutorials than you could even matrix into your brain in 1 month, but they are all there for you to look through, to choose from, to find the thing that really matters to you, when and how it matters to you, and just get it. You can even upgrade to a premium plan if you want to download the courses or you want to get project files and work along with the experts. Here's an example of some of the topics: iPhone and iPad essentials, tips, iPad and iPhone tips and tricks, create an iPad web app, shooting with the iPhone, setting up your mobile office. It's just, again, if there's something that you're curious about, almost certainly Lynda has you covered. So here's what I want you to do. we've worked out a great deal with lynda.com. You can try it for free. All you have to do is go to lynda.com/iMore. That's lynda.com/iMore. You can try it for free for 7 days. That is actually a lot of time. If you are smart about it, you can do some damage to lynda.com in that period of time. You can learn a bunch of stuff. I'm willing to bet you that you will learn enough that you are going to want to make it a regular subscription. There are colleges and businesses which just provide these subscriptions because there are things that Lynda teaches in a way that's better than anybody else teaches them. So that's lynda.com/iMore, free 7-day trial. I want to thank Lynda for sponsoring the show, and I want to thank you for giving them a try. So big news this week. We'll start off. We're not going to bury the lead. Big news this week is Apple debuted WatchKit, which is their framework for developing not real apps yet, not full-blown apps. That's going to come next year, but interactive notifications, glances, which are sort of like Today View widgets, and quote-unquote apps, which are basically interface that run on the watch while computation and data transfer back and forth from the phone. And Ren, you wrote up all about this. What do you think?
I do. I'm really intrigued by it. Obviously it's not as good as a full-featured app SDK, but for battery reasons and many others, it makes sense for Apple to kind of soft launch this and be like, okay, devs, let's give you some tools to play with, some tools that we're pretty sure are not going to break the phone or make it unhappy for customers, and then we'll give you a better SDK later next year, probably at DubDub, that allows you to build full-featured apps. But the actual, the documentation, first of all, anybody who is just plain interested about it, I did a little how-to sort of write-up of what's in WatchKit right now. But Apple's documentation is really clear and really easy to read. And as someone I have maybe a year of Xcode experience under my belt, so I can sort of understand what variables are supposed to do, but beyond that, it's all Greek. And there's a 28-minute introductory video to WatchKit that actually makes perfect sense to me and explains, oh well, okay, so the code is all executed on your iPhone, and it's actually packaged within an iOS app that you already download to your iPhone. It just happens to, it's almost in parts, it actually is handoff, sort of handing off little discrete bits of information to your watch. But it's like handoff in other ways, where it pushes all of that information to your watch in the form of either stationary notifications or, as you said, limited version apps. So it's really quite cool. The stuff that they're experimenting with, and it's a lot more than I think anybody really expected to get at this point. We all remember the disaster not disaster, but the frustration that was developing for the original iPhone. Web apps are just like real apps, guys. It's fine.
Sweet solution.
Yeah, not so sweet, turns out. Kind of like raisins. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what iOS developers can do. And the coolest thing to me is that they can build this on as sort of an add-on for their apps. The question mark is how many people are going to do it, especially when you consider that if it's built as an add-on to your app, that means that Apple doesn't have a separate monetization scheme for Apple Watch apps, which means that, apps may get dinged if they're like, we want to charge an extra $1 for having support for the Apple Watch, and then customers are like, how dare you raise the price? So, we go back to the discussion we had last week about the App Store being crazy. That is my only sort of big question mark in regards to that. But otherwise, I'm really psyched for it, and I think developers seem pretty amped too.
We had a couple questions about that already. So one of the questions was developers asking, can they charge for WatchKit, widgets or glances or whatever apps? And the answer looks like it's no. We haven't heard anything officially from Apple, but WatchKit is built on the same ideas, like you said, of extensibility and continuity. And extensibility is not a discrete thing. There's no switch you can flip. If you download an extensibility app and it has a widget, it has to present that widget. You can't enable that widget later. There would just be a big blank space.
There's no in-app purchase for widgets.
Yeah, and it looks like the same will be true for a watch, even a watch app, unless Apple expressly builds something for it. And that sort of leads to the second question we got, which is, did Apple create extensibility and continuity with the watch in mind? And my understanding is that the way it works at Apple, The watch has been going on, it's been under development a lot longer. I'm not sure how long continuity has been under development, but extensibility has only been under development for about a year and a bit. And that's after the watch started. But I think what often happens is that Apple has all these smart people working on these smart projects. And when the time comes to do something like this SDK, we make fun of the sweet solution, but it is a testament to how good mobile WebKit was at the time that they could even proffer that to developers. And I think this is a testament to how good extensibility turned out to be, that they can use it to maintain battery life and privacy and still, provide a framework for early app development. So my understanding is, this is just a virtuous cycle, a confluence of marvelous things that all of this came together at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, you want to go back to too many pots in the fire, but probably for the best. The fact that Apple was working on all of this simultaneously, in some respects, allowed them to be able to be like, all right, bam, continuity, bam, extensions, bam, the watch has both smushed together. And then we're going to expand the ecosystem both on the software level and the hardware level. And I think that's really nifty for them to be able to do, especially in the time frame that they've been doing it. I mean, extensibility will have been less than a year old, maybe 5 months by the time the Apple Watch is launched. That's huge. Like to say that Apple had such confidence in this brand new feature that they're building an entire hardware platform off of it is really impressive.
It's amazing. There was a couple other things. So notifications, there's two kinds. They're short and they're short look and long look. I think that's what they called them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that works is if your watch is down and there's a chance someone else can see the screen, you get a short look. Also, if it's in power saving mode, you get a short look because it doesn't want to transfer much information. And that's basically an app icon that tells you that Facebook or Twitter or your garage door is sending you a message or something. And then if there's a lot of power and or you do an explicit action like raising your wrist up and bringing it close, it'll expand into a longer notification, which is almost like an iPhone notification now, which will give you part of the message, or it might give you a button saying open or close. I'm totally ripping off Brad Ellis here. Open and close your garage door. Which is really cool. And then you have the ability, there's very limited navigation you can do. There's a hierarchy, which is like the mail app, where you can go up into accounts, down into messages. And then there's sequences like web pages or photos where you can go back to the previous one, forward to the next one. And that's about it. So it's incredibly limited. And Peter, it makes me wonder, first, what kind of apps would actually be useful if you move them over to the watch? Because I don't think it's a given the way that making an iPhone app was.
Well, I think that Apple, in introducing the watch, has emphasized communication apps as particularly efficacious on the phone itself. New ways of communicating on the device, either with other Apple Watch users or even with people who are using other devices, but as a way of staying in touch in a way that doesn't make you have to go nose down into your phone to communicate. That seems to be one major area that Apple's emphasizing. The other, obviously, is health. People use Fitbits, people use Ups, people use all sorts of fitness tracking devices, and the Apple Watch is going to be a key device for that as well. But I think that when it comes to the personalization and customization of information that we need to or that we want to have in our daily lives, that's really where Apple sees Apple Watch's best potential going forward. Obviously, a lot of it isn't going to be terribly useful. Obviously, some of it is going to be just embellishments, whether it's putting a Mickey Mouse type phone on your wrist or being able to tell what the time is in Zanzibar. These are fun things. These can be useful things under the right circumstances, but there's going to be a little bit of show-off stuff there as well. The most exciting applications for Apple Watch, though, are the stuff that we haven't dreamed up yet, though. Once these devices are out, once they're on people's wrists, and once the developers have their hands on the SDK that they're going to be used to create these apps, the sky's the limit. And just as it was impossible to predict how the iPhone was going to be developed for prior to the iPhone SDK's release. I think it's still kind of premature to know how exactly WatchKit is going to turn into really cool apps for people. What we do know, though, is the usage parameters of the Apple Watch are going to be a little bit more restricted than they were for iPhones or for iPads or for Macs, for example, because they're not standalone devices. They are, by their very nature, tethered to an iPhone. And an iPhone of a fairly recent vintage. So that gives you at least some idea of the direction the developers have to go in when it comes to creating apps. But within that spectrum, there's a very broad base of things to do.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because, again, going back to the web apps, and it's amazing how many parallels you can draw there. If you weren't connected to the internet, if you weren't online, your app ceased to work. You might keep the same screen up. You might get an error screen. We don't know what will happen with watch apps when they're no longer near the iPhone, but they won't work because they need their logic. Like the interface exists on the watch, but the logic exists on the phone. So if you go jogging without your phone or your network goes down, well, but if there's some interruption or dropout in the communication between the two devices, those apps won't update anymore. So it's not its own independent thing yet, and that'll be interesting to see how developers handle it. Do you have any idea what you want to see on the watch in terms of apps, Allie?
I don't really know yet. I think I'm still wavering on whether or not the watch is going to be useful for me personally. So I haven't really given much thought to it. I can see, like, walking through a busy airport, being able to glance at boarding passes or changes like that being useful instead of having to dig my phone out of a purse or something. But I don't know. I have to think about that for a while. I can't really find any real world practical uses for me yet, but I'm sure they'll come. I'll find a reason to buy it.
An excuse. It interests me, and Ren, tell me what you think about this. That it's, for me, the entire the thing that's going to convince me, or I think the entire way to sell the watch is convenience. So it's going to be like Ali said, the boarding pass is right there on your wrist. You don't have to hold the phone awkwardly while you're trying to go through the gate. The Apple Pay similarly is right on your wrist. The fitness tracking things, if you're running, you just want to glance and see what your heart rate is or something, you don't have to fish for the phone. If you get a notification in and you're having dinner and you don't want to reach into your phone and be that person who stares at the phone screen, you can just glance at your wrist. And I think that's how you're going to have to sell all these experiences.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the biggest thing that has me excited about the watch is it seems weird to be like, by adding another piece of technology, we're actually going to be making ourselves more social rather than less social. But by putting it in a piece of technology that we've owned for years, where it's not impolite to glance at your watch and be like, is this something important? Oh, yeah, no, this is an email from somebody I don't need to see right now. Okay, I can go back to my conversation. In current terms, what we're doing is my phone buzzes in my pocket. Unless I have a specific vibration tone set up for that particular contact, I don't know what kind of a buzz that is. Is it a life-threatening emergency buzz? Is it the world has burned down and work needs you buzz? Or is it my little sister wants to talk about jeans? You don't really know. And at this point, there are things that we always want to respond to, even when we are out in public situations. And the iPhone has made that really easy to do. But this is really awkward and annoying. And I'm still talking to you, but it doesn't look like I'm paying attention, despite the fact that I'm in this conversation. Whereas I feel like a device like the watch is very easy to be like, da 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 da. Okay, let's go back to this conversation. I don't have to pull anything out. I don't have to even break my gaze for more than a second talking to someone. I'm really excited about that. And I don't know how well it'll work in practice, but
I think it's going to depend heavily on how obtrusive notifications are. I just know with my brief experience with the Pebble, it almost seemed rude. I can't, my wrist vibrates. It's almost like I've trained myself to ignore my pocket when it vibrates. But my wrist, I just look at it and then someone's like, do you have somewhere you need to be? Because I keep looking at my wrist. And, I feel like that could be an issue too. So it depends on how notifications are implemented and how you treat those.
It sounds like from the documentation that notifications will be able to be set up on a per app basis like they are on iOS, which means that in theory you could only be buzzed by very specific things, or with messages or with mail. And you
Google 8 Serenity.
things.
Oh man.
Google, give us back our Serenity.
I mean, this is kind of entertaining.
Did the Hangout eat me? Am I back?
Now you're back.
You were a robot for like 30 seconds.
That's very strange. Yeah, I was just saying the vibration pattern is supposed to be very minimal. Yep. So it's not going to be like I've worn the Pebble before, and the Pebble's vibration is kind of like a jackhammer, where it's like, pay attention to me.
Your attention, and I couldn't help but like look at it, where I've almost like, I don't know, subconsciously trained myself if my pocket vibrates, where I know other people that have trained themselves in the opposite manner, where the phone rings and it's like immediately out of the pocket. So I guess it's kind of the same response. It's like Pavlov's dog. It's like, what are you going to do when your phone vibrates?
You know, what I'm actually, this is going to sound really dumb, but I'm actually really looking forward to destroying the smart crown, because I'm like, when I talk to people or just in general, I like fiddling just with my hands. Like it helps keep me centered and like not all over the place. And so I can already see myself like breaking the smart crown, because as I'm talking to people, I'm just going to be dialing that thing back and forth. Just be like, but it's something tactile to play with. It's something that I can be like, I'm paying full attention to somebody. I'm just doing something so that I can pay full attention to somebody.
Yeah, it's like doodling.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like I doodle all the time, like talking to folks, and I'm not ignoring you. It's just, it helps me think better.
My teachers thought I took lots of notes in school. Didn't take a single note. All full of doodles. Allie, I'm right there with you, because yesterday I went to see a movie. I went to see Interstellar, which is apparently 9 gravitational hours long. And while I was sitting there, my pocket was just vibrating over and over again. And it was so often. And I have almost no notification set up. You have to either...
I think you and I are the same in that aspect. Everything's turned off my lock screen.
I have iMessage for certain people like you guys and my family. I have Slack if someone mentions my name, and my pocket. And at one point I had to get up and leave because I thought there was an emergency, and it was just Kevin Mitchell streaming a bunch of stuff at me. But I was trying to watch.
It could be an emergency, but
it wasn't in this case. But I mean, it was something. It was actually, I'm gonna out him here. He's addicted to the Kim Kardashian game, and he was trying to find Allie's guide to it.
So my hot tip for theater and in general is I love airplane mode. Airplane mode is my new favorite thing, where I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to be unreachable for 2 hours. Yeah.
I sometimes do that, but my mom was babysitting, and if she had any trouble, I wanted her to be able to reach me.
That's understandable.
But I suffered Kardashian horror and hell for it. But the other thing that's interesting to me is, Peter, we were talking about the watch and the interface being separate from the logic of the app, and it's going back and forth with handoff. So there's a Bluetooth connection there. I believe there's Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi like you can get on the internet Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi to transfer larger amounts of data. But I don't know how much you've used handoff yet. I've used it a bunch, and sometimes it's absolutely instantaneous, and sometimes I can count to 15 or 30 before the document moves over. And if my entire app interactivity is based on that sort of potential latency, I don't know how that's going to feel.
Indeed. Yeah, this is one of my concerns with handoff as well, just in general. I've seen it work spectacularly well, and I've also seen it work spectacularly miserably. And I'm sure that that's a work in progress that Apple is addressing with future versions of iOS 8 and with Yosemite. But it's definitely something that Apple has to lock down tight before the Apple Watch comes.
And it's doable, right? Because I forget who mentioned this yesterday, but PlayStation controllers are Bluetooth, and you have to perform well enough for you to control a game.
That's true. You know, I don't know that there's a direct parallel there, but certainly Bluetooth itself is not the cause of this. There's a lot of overhead. There's a lot of overhead in each operating system that may explain why these things don't work exactly right. But, you know, in Handoff's case, there have been cases where my iPhone has been in my jacket pocket and I've gotten a call, and I've heard it going off on my iPad, but I haven't been able to find it on my Mac, which happens to be sitting right in front of me. And there's other stuff that hasn't worked exactly right for me that it continues to be a frustration. You know, for example,
water, right? That's not great for reception.
Right, exactly. AirDrop. You know, AirDrop is something that still doesn't work right for me. As much as I was hoping it would after 10.10.1. and the latest iOS 8 build came out. So again, it's a work in progress. I understand that Apple is juggling a lot of new technology here, and we may not be able to expect perfection on the first try, but Apple's got to get it locked down sooner or later. This is now a key feature of both operating systems, both iOS 8 and OS 10, and ostensibly it's going to be a key feature of the Apple Watch as well.
It's going to be dependency for the watch.
It's going to be dependency for the watch. So this is stuff that has to absolutely work ironclad. Apple's got to get its ducks in a row as soon as possible.
I find it ironic. I had no issues with like Mac to Mac AirDrop ever, and then all of a sudden, like that's broke. That's like something that's been around forever, and all of a sudden
they changed it. The version in Yosemite is completely different than the previous.
Yeah, it has different changes.
Just frustrating.
Really, yeah, it's odd to me. I had significant problems with continuity between my phone and my MacBook, but once I got to my iMac, my iMac iPhone continuity handoff has been seamless. Super fast, instantaneous, always pops up, always shows up. So I mean, it's like when they're getting it right, they're getting it really right. But it's still up and down right now. Like right now, I was trying to see if I could force my my Mac to give me a prompt, and nope, my Mac does not want to do handoff here.
So last night we recorded an episode of Debug with the show I do with Guy English, and I'm pronouncing it in Guy English fashion.
Debug.
So we had James Thompson from PCalc. We had Ashley Nelson. I'm going to get her last name wrong, so I'm not even going to try it. From Dropbox, and we had Brian Irace from Tumblr, and we had Bradley Ellis from. I'm using Bradley Ellis because that's what he uses on Skype. It's so professional. From Pacific Helm. And they raised some excellent points. One of Brad's points that I thought was very apt is the watch faces are all black, and they have really big bezels. So as much as the iPhone and Yosemite have taught us to have these white, bright interfaces, if you do that on the watch, your app's going to look really teeny tiny. But if you do a black background on your app, it's going to look expansive. It's going to look border to border. So and Apple, the way they're telling developers to use tint colors and things, these are not going to be just little shrunk down iPhone apps. These are going to look qualitatively different, and I think that's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the interface guidelines are particularly really intriguing. That's a document available to anybody who wants to kind of take a peek at it, and they're emphasizing very much like, black backgrounds, use this font, but only at a certain amount of text sizes, legibility above all. You can use buttons, but here are the ways that you should style them. The one thing that, in terms of usability, that I'm a little curious about is that they have a couple of different sort of ways that you can build an app, and you can build it either so that it can swipe side to side, or it's modal menus, which we're very much used to on the iPhone, where you tap something and then there's a little back arrow. Now you look on the Apple Watch mock-ups, and that little tiny back with the arrow is maybe 10, 15 pixels high.
I saw that.
And I'm like, all right, I'm assuming the touch target is going to be pretty big there.
Yeah.
But even with the touch target being big, that means that, if you have something immediately under it, getting accidental touches.
Giant fingers. The one thing you mentioned that's interesting to me is like none of this is behind a developer wall or login. This is all public. And if you go back to the iPhone SDK, you weren't even allowed to talk about it once it came out. It was a complete muzzle. And this is, as far as I can tell, a total 180 from that.
I love it. I'm so excited to see how open they're being with it, and even like the Apple Watch evangelists are being very chatty on Twitter and encouraging people to file bugs, pointing people to the right direction.
I almost wonder if it allows them to just get more feedback, because I mean, it's interesting to me. Like I learn more about writing help and how-to content when I can just follow Twitter chatter. You know what I mean? Or like Reddit threads or things like that. So it seems to me like maybe opening that up publicly, you don't have to have such a big beta test pool, and you can kind of just pull chatter in from different sources.
Yeah, I think that's really useful, and I'm glad that they're finally sort of embracing that. There was a long time where, there was a moratorium on Apple employees, even evangelists. Like, I feel like Michael Jurowitz is the only person I knew at Apple who was allowed to speak on Twitter without fear of retribution. And even he was very closed mouth at times. And I feel like that door is just opening in general, and which is really exciting and encouraging to see, both from a consumer standpoint and from a developer standpoint, because it's like there's nothing better than being able to actually DM the engineer who's working on the frameworks that you're working on and being like, hey, is this possible? Am I going down a rabbit hole here? Rather than, writing something and then having just an echo chamber.
Although it's interesting because those engineers don't scale, and with the kind of workload, it's going to be a mixed blessing. It'll help. I guess it'll help on the broadcast end, but on the receiving end, it could be arduous.
Yes, they could all of a sudden start receiving many, many more tweets.
But yeah, I cannot recommend that enough. Even if you have no interest in development, just seeing the kinds of stuff that you can do on the watch, because we're not going to get it until next spring. And if you're interested in it, this at least gives you much more information than the event did, and maybe gives you an idea. Peter, you and I could soon be paying for our Tim Hortons with a watch app. It's going to be a beautiful future.
Well,
What's
maybe
Tim
you can pay
Hortons?
for,
Okay.
maybe you can pay for your Tim Hortons. I'll be paying with my Dunkin' Donuts.
Your Timbits at Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes, indeed.
Little
Hey, Dunkin' Donuts has a croissant donut now.
They do? I
Yes.
still yet to try a cronut.
Yeah. They don't call it a cronut because, well, copyright, but or trademark. But yes, they do indeed have a croissant donut. I haven't I wasn't able to lay my hands on one before my surgery. It's my one regret. So
I'm gonna wait to try a cronut until I can pay with my Apple Watch.
there you go.
That's reasonable. You know what? Pay for something ridiculous with something ridiculous.
Yeah, that's another bit of news as we move. So any final thoughts on the watch? We'll just go around the room quickly. Ali, does the SDK make you any more or less interested, or are you still the same as you were before they launched it?
It's made me more intrigued as far as app development. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I think I need to get an idea of how notifications are going to work. I've kind of tried in the past several months to separate myself from notifications on my phone so much, so I'm not quite sure if a watch is going to help or hinder that goal. So,
What about you, Peter?
The watch itself, the hardware, doesn't excite me enough to make me want to go out and get it on launch day. I'm kind of taking a wait and see approach. The Apple Watch is really something that I think is going to live or die for my use, based on the apps that are available for it. So I'm very interested to see how the presence of the SDK changes things, and what sort of apps and what sort of features we're going to be hearing about in the coming months, because that is going to make the difference for me as to whether or not this is something I have to have or just something that might be nice to have at some point in the future.
health may make a difference for me. I'm not sure, because some of the sensors that it has may make a little bit of a difference, but then you have other products like the Up 3 coming out that has O2 sensors and, some of the other things that tie into health, and my understanding is a lot of those can tie into HealthKit anyway, so.
I just want to see an Apple Watch that can detect Allie's rage level, and then as she's walking around, she'll see like a raisin or something and walk away. Allie, calm down. She'll just get angry at the watch, and it's going to have a totally negative consequence. What about you, Ren?
I am very much looking forward to the watch. As I said, like my current problem with having this out constantly, I try and self-regulate, but even then it's challenging when people are constant on the internet. So I'm really kind of hoping that the watch will aid some of that. And I didn't buy a Pebble because I thought, like, after playing with friends, I was like, this is too much for me.
The notifications, I think, are what killed the Pebble for me. It's like a jackhammer. Like, there's no way to ignore that on your wrist. I could have a winter coat on and I'm still like, why is my wrist doing this? Like, clawing at it. But yeah, and I'm the type of person where I have tunnel vision. I can do one thing and one thing at a time. And if I'm looking at my phone or at a watch, I'm not hearing what's going on. Heather yells, I'm not allowed to have my phone out in the supermarket because I will run into people because I don't pay attention.
You're not environmentally aware.
Yeah, it's great for work focus because I can hammer out like things in 4 hours and just be done and concentrate that long. But for like social skills, it's not so great. So I'm worried the watch is just going to make my life worse.
Do you guys wear watches normally? I don't.
Nope.
I used to, not anymore.
I did until I had an iPhone.
Peter?
I had a watch until I got my first laptop. When I got my first laptop, I stopped wearing it because I started scratching up the surface of it and said, I don't want to damage this thing because
I don't even
spent a
know
lot
what
of
time
money
it
on
is.
Yeah.
Yes, and having a complete lack of interest in chronology. certainly helped. And then as soon as I got a cell phone, and realized that the cell phone had a built-in clock, I said, well, I really don't need a watch. So that's another reason why I'm probably a little ambivalent about the Apple Watch itself.
I always find myself taking watches off when I type because it hurts my wrist, and then I forget to put them back on. Yeah, like it just hurts the bottom of my wrist, so then I'll take it off and put it on my desk, and it never goes back on my wrist. Like that was really what killed the Pebble, that and notifications.
I had the Pebble, I just forget to charge it often enough, I stopped using it. So we had a couple quick questions. One from Jonty Gamau. I can't help but wonder, how long will Apple Watch last before the user needs to replace with a newer Apple Watch with better specs? And we don't know that yet, though Apple does have that handy S1 complete computing package. So it's theoretical there could be upgrades or trade-ins, but will it be a yearly device like the iPhone or iPad? Will it be every couple of years like the Apple TV? Until it comes out, we have no way of knowing.
I'm really kind of hoping that it will actually function much like a real watch, where you can kind of fiddle with not personally fiddle with the internals, but especially when you think about the Edition. The Edition is not designed to last a year and then for people to throw it away and get a new one.
It's too expensive.
It's too expensive, exactly. Especially if it's going to be more than $1,000, $2,500, $5,000. What's probably likely is either they'll be able to replace the internals, like basically flip it over, pull it out whole hog.
Take the S1 out, put in an S2.
Exactly. No, I would not be surprised if that, because from what it's going to be launching with close to Retina, if not Retina display.
The smaller one is and the bigger one is 280 or 290.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, for that small a device, that's pretty much Retina resolution. So in terms of the display, unless they're going to try and like really go hardcore and try and make it like a crazy display next year, there's the externals of the watch will probably be okay. If there's a way for them to kind of pop out chips, that would be very useful. Or even a trade-in program where it's like, all right, spend $99 to upgrade on, your $5,000 piece of technology.
I would almost, given Apple's patterns with other devices, I could see trade-in being probably the most likely culprit, and it would be different price points depending on what model watch you currently have, if that makes sense. I could see that being feasible. I mean, because that would be fair to me. I wouldn't want to trade in a 5,000 however much the Edition's going to be the next year. So, I mean, if I could get upgraded specs for a reasonable amount, I would do that. But
and I think they'll need to, because the current specs are probably like the constraints of the current specs are probably why we're seeing the SDK built the way it is, and that history tells us that those things change over the year-over-year basis. The last thing I wanted to mention, Peter, I don't know if you saw this, but there's a new font with the Apple Watch. It's called San Francisco, and there's already a GitHub project that you can download that'll make it your system font on the Mac.
Indeed, yeah. San Francisco is a little bit more. It's a sans serif font. It's a little bit more spindly, I guess you could say, but it's certainly clear and legible. So if you've been jonesing to give it a try, you can certainly install it if you want. Although it'll take a little bit of terminal wizardry to get you there.
It looks nice. I mean, and Apple's got a bunch of special use case, like different colon elevations and different numbers and patterns in there. It's not the Apple songs that we've heard they've been playing around with for a long time for possible use on mobile devices, but it's unique, and it gives it more of an identity than Helvetica, certainly. Mm-hmm. And they've got two versions, one for the smaller type and one for the larger type. And I think Gruber said that both of them look expressly designed to make it impossible for you to print them.
Yes. Well, it's not even so much that the designs themselves are impossible to print. It's that Apple has quite literally disabled printing on those fonts. There is a hack currently. Well, not so much a hack as a very simple terminal command to make San Francisco your default font on OS X, and I did that for my iMac last night.
Yeah, don't you just have to go change something and then repair disk permissions?
Yep.
And
exactly, it's very simple, and I think we have a link to it on the site. We can put it in the show notes, but it was super simple and looks really good. I mean, I like Helvetica, but San Francisco looks really good. It's a little thin. That's the only, people who are already complaining about Helvetica Light, San Francisco is even thinner in terms of font weight, but it looks pretty damn good.
And Curtis Boyle in the chat room is saying he would imagine that he thinks the upgrade is more likely simply because he doesn't think people are going to trade in really expensive gold watches that might have custom engraving on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so sorry.
By the way, here's a little trivia fact for old school Mac users. This isn't the first appearance of a San Francisco typeface. San Francisco was one of the original bitmap typefaces that was included on the Mac when it first came out in 1984.
It was the ransom note font, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the ransom note font. Exactly right. And sort of disappeared by the time that System 7 came around. But here we are all these years later, and a font called San Francisco is now available again.
And it ties into the Yosemite, a Maverick sort of California landmark theme.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. We're going to take a quick break so I can tell you about Grammarly. Grammarly is an iPhone app. Basically, it's an Instagram app, and it was written because not everyone is happy with the official Instagram app. Some people want something more. Some people would want something, dare I say, better. So here's what it does. It lets you have multiple accounts and switch between them at will. So for example, if you have a personal account and you have an account for your company, or you have an account for your project, or maybe you make music or art or something on the side, something you want to share people with that's not in your main account, you can easily do that with Grammarly. You can see what feeds you want to show, what feeds you want to hide. You can use Touch ID to lock your account so only you can have access to it. So if you hand somebody your phone, if someone says, "Please, sir, I need to reach my parents, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, whatever," and you hand them your phone, they can't suddenly go rifling through all your pictures. You can like images, you can do all that sort of stuff. There's configurable grids of videos. You can double tap images to show them full screen. That's one of the problems with Instagram. Sometimes you see a picture, you want to look at it more closely, you tap on it because that's expected iOS behavior, and it favorites it instead of zooming, and you're just left dazed and confused. So there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do. This is an app, those of us here at Mobile Nations, because a lot of us have both our own account and we have, like, for example, there is an iMore account that I barely ever use because it's just inconvenient to log in, log out of Instagram all the time. With Grammarly, I can have them logged in all at the same time. It's something that should be in the default app because it's not. It's in Grammarly. We don't have to wait. It's here right now. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to experience Instagram you've always wanted it. All you have to do is download Grammarly for iOS. Get your gram on. You can just go to the App Store. You can search for Grammarly as Gramory, or you can go to Grammarly.com. I recommend you just go straight to the App Store. Just download Grammarly. Your Instagram feed will thank you. Your sanity will thank you, and we will absolutely thank you. This is interesting. Apple used to have the word free on the App Store, and it would be free even if it included IAPs. And Europe, as Europe is wont to do, decided to get a little bit fussy about that and said, you can't tell people they are free if they are not free. This is my mixed up German accent. It's not from any country, so don't send me email. It's a transatlantic accent. You must properly distinguish which one it is. So Apple actually got rid of the word free and they put the word get there instead. So now, yesterday, if you went to the App Store, it would say, $2.99, $1.99, 99 cents, get. Richard Devine pointed out that they were gone for him on the App Store. I didn't have a chance to look. It just didn't list prices anymore. But the get language is interesting because, Apple couldn't really put IAP there because a normal human being is not going to know what IAP means on a price tag. They couldn't put 0 there because that's probably the same problem as free. And it illustrates both sort of the interesting thing that happens when you have software that might be initially free but has subscriptions or purchases down the road. But also when you're dealing with international, like Apple has to change the entire store because Europe was upset. I don't know if they'd change it if Antarctica was upset, but it does show that when you're dealing international scale, you are subject, and Google's found this out recently too, you're subject sometimes to what happens in countries far removed from where you yourself are based.
So does it say free for apps that are genuinely free and don't have any type of in-app purchase? Because that would make sense to me. Yeah. See, I probably would have liked that more if they would have kept free for apps that are actually free, no in-app purchase option, and then get would be, that's an indicator that there's a pretty easy indicator that there's in-app purchases.
I don't know if people understand that either.
So on my store, the get or free has disappeared from anything that.
I see that now.
So what's interesting now is you look at a collection like Best New Games, and you see the 4 or 5 games that have little prices underneath them, and then anything that's free to play or free just has no price anymore. Which I don't know if that's going to highlight the games that have prices and encourage people to get them, or put more stigma on the idea of charging for apps. I haven't decided yet, but it's an interesting strategy. I do think that you're right, Allie. I'm surprised that Apple didn't go the way of like, they can tell what app has in-app purchases and what app doesn't.
Well, it's just weird for me because, I mean, when I look at lists now, even apps that say get, it says in-app purchases underneath it.
Well, they always have the plus sign, right, for in-app purchases. Like it would be free.
No, the plus sign means that it's universal.
Oh, universal.
iPhone and iPad.
But yeah, there was always a thing that said,
Yeah, like even in a list view, like if you go into one of the collections under featured and it has a list view, you can see even tiny underneath it, it says in-app purchases, and then when you click on it, it says offers in-app purchases again. Yeah. So it's just weird that that's a complaint issue because that's been there since I think iOS 7. They started doing that with the in-app purchases.
Yeah, after the lawsuits where people claim that their kids spent, untold millions of dollars on.
Don't give your kids your iTunes password, or let them register a fingerprint on your phone. I don't really know what else to say about that.
That's what family sharing is for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it does. I mean, I don't know a better solution for this. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons the times when language and interface collide, because you have these different categories of apps. You have apps that are absolutely free. You have apps that the app it's free, but you have to get a subscription to the service, like Netflix or some other things. You have apps that are free, but you can buy things once you're inside them, like a lot of free-to-play games. Then you have games that are charged up front, where you have to pay a few dollars to even get the game. Then you have games that are paid up front, but you can buy even more stuff inside them, whether you get a subscription or you get in-app purchases. And that's a wide range of things that all has to be explained to you in the glance the size of a button.
And it's all our doing.
Mm-hmm.
What new devilry is this?
Tisk.
So I don't know a good solution is, and we talked about this when the ruling came down and wondering what Apple would do with it. Get, it's an active verb, but it doesn't translate. Like if you see $1 and you see get, it doesn't explain to me what that means. I mean, it's a solution. I can't say it's a good one.
Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily know if there's. I mean, I guess it's better than free, but I mean, then again, it said free offers and app purchases, so I mean, I understood that fine too, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's just tricky.
So what is the problem? So let's try to define this problem here. You have an app and someone wants to get it. And what they need to know right away is whether it's going to cost them money to get it or they can simply download it. Once they've established those things, they should know if there's going to be recurring charges inside of it either way. And so you have to clearly define those two states: one-time payment, no payment. Potential payments and no potential payments. And again, one tiny little button. Because I don't think I'd understand this. I think I'd go there and I'd see $2 and I'd see the other one with nothing there, and I'd just assume that the interface was broken. Because look, it's screwed up. There's no price tag there. Where's that price tag? Now I'm afraid to push on it because I don't know what it means.
Someone mentioned on Twitter to us that they could put a $sign in the corner, the opposite of the plus sign.
Maybe.
I think when you start adding icons and different little devilry to a button,
get so many icons, yeah.
Yeah, I think it just complicates the problem. I don't necessarily know if there is a good solution minus consumers reading what they're buying. I don't know.
What was that?
Consumer education? What's wrong with you?
Consumer education.
Why do you hate America?
Yeah.
What was that? I forget what movie. I watched a movie recently where someone was complaining that you can't buy coffee now without a giant warning label being on it saying hot might burn you. And that we've become an infantilized society.
I would agree with that statement, and I'd hate to say it, but I think a lot of that is where a lot of this comes from. I mean, I do know that some developers are not very good at stating upfront costs, or they nickel and dime inside of apps, but that's when I delete the app and find something else. But it depends, and I don't think there's a good solution for everyone across the board.
The alternative is to come up with some very intricate scheme for divulging exactly how much money the consumer may spend on the app, and that doesn't seem to be a workable solution, because that's something that people are going to get burned out by very easily and will ultimately just ignore. So,
or restricting developers as to what they can offer, and that's not really fair either.
No, it isn't.
So I don't think there's a really fair solution on either side at this point.
Yeah, to be determined, I guess. My guess is that this is going to be just confusing differently. This is not going to be less confusing. It'll be a different kind of confusion.
Well, as long as the confusion, it complies with the regulatory framework of the European Union, then Apple is all set.
We had a couple of good updates this week. We had OS 10 Mavericks 10.10.1. I'll wait for a second while Daniel Jalka's head reassembles itself. And we also had iOS 8.1.1. In typical developer parlance, you get the original build, which is going to have bugs. You get the emergency bug fix build, and then a little while later, you get the fix to the fix build, which is usually the safe build. People who know about software but don't have to download, who don't have to.
Those are lies, Rene.
Pardon me?
Those are lies, Rene.
Well, so I'll let Peter talk about Yosemite, but 8.1.1 so far, for me at least, has been very good. It's fixed a lot of nagging issues. It's got I haven't seen much, if any, reports about battery life. It's returning, over half a gigabyte of data to iPad users of storage capacity. It also seems to fix the caching issue, so that if you had a lot of files that weren't cleared from your cache, it can give you back 4, 5, 6 gigabytes of space. The performance is way better for the iPhone 4S and the iPad 2. It works better on both of those. If anyone was hesitating about upgrading, if anyone read Peter's article back in September and decided to wait and see what would happen, I think this is the moment where you can say, it's safe, go ahead, this is going to give you a good experience now.
There are two things that I've seen with 8.1.1. One I've experienced, one I didn't. The first, a lot of people seem to be losing ring and text tones when they update to 8.1.1. I had a couple people text me about that last night, and then I had people tweeting me about it, and I'm finding stuff in Apple's support forums. Not sure why. I know ring and text tones are different from app purchases. You cannot re-download them, so that's an interesting problem. Because
they had that problem with 8.0 as well.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's going to need an update or what, but it seems like a lot of people, if they go into settings, they can see that ringtones and text tones are taking up space, but they're not there. So I didn't have that issue. An issue I did have was app deletion. So I go to delete an app, the icons wiggle, I tap on the X, and it freezes my phone completely. And then I can't do anything. I can't hit the home button. I can't turn it off. I have to wait 30 seconds, and then that delete pop-up finally comes up. The 8.1.1 beta fixed that for me, and then I updated to the final version, and it broke it again. So
it's working fine. They hate you, Ellie.
It's all three of my devices, so I don't know if it's just someone screwing with me or what. But
entirely likely.
Yeah, I don't know, but I've had that issue, but it seems like a lot of people are having the ringtone issue. So if you have not updated yet, I would highly advise plugging your phone into iTunes if you have a computer and transferring your ringtone purchases, because if you lose them, at this point, I don't see a way to get them back. So if you have them in iTunes, you can then sync them back to your device. But since ringtones are not like apps and books and movies and TV, you can't just go under purchased and re-download them.
Yeah, I saw people have that problem with 8.0 as well, so it looks like a lingering bug, and I'd recommend that for anybody who has any content they're especially nervous about.
Yeah. Do an manual iTunes backup.
Yeah, but otherwise 8.1.1 super solid for me, even more solid than the developers.
Yeah, it seems to be working better with handoff, continuity. Every other aspect, it seems like it's fine. My battery life seemed to even get a little bit better, but
I haven't been charging my phone. Most nights, I just leave it on my nightstand and haven't been charging it. And I went 2 days. Yesterday, I didn't charge it overnight, and I was at 30%. By the end of the second day, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the only thing that makes me. I use my 6 on a regular basis, but I sometimes question that and want to use my Plus because the battery life is so ridiculous. The 6 is not anywhere near as good as the 6 Plus.
Well, you're talking about 30% larger battery.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that surprising.
No, it's not, but it makes me jealous because I much prefer my 6. I want the best of both worlds.
Oh, yeah.
On everything. How does the new version of Yosemite look, Peter?
Well, there are certainly some improvements. Wi-Fi reliability was the marquee feature that many people were hoping for, many people were waiting for. So 10.10.1 improves Wi-Fi reliability. I hate to say it, it doesn't fix Wi-Fi for everyone, but if you've been having Wi-Fi reliability problems, if your Mac has been dropping off of Wi-Fi, or if you've been connecting to the wrong network, or if you've been having other Wi-Fi related problems, 10.10.1 is the first thing that I would tell you to try. It also helps improve reliability when you're connecting to a Microsoft Exchange server. So Microsoft Exchange users had a lot of migration trouble going to Yosemite. So that's another important fix, especially for corporate users who depend on Exchange for their use. Some fixes to mail to help improve sending messages through certain email service providers. That's another important fix. If you've been having email problems with Yosemite, this one is good for you. It also fixes a problem related to Back to My Mac. So if Back to My Mac is something that stopped working right after you installed Yosemite, again, 10.10.1 is something that you will want to install. There are some other changes as well, some notification center improvements, some improvements to security, some improvements that can help Mac Minis wake from sleep more reliably. So all told, it's a lot of cleanup. It certainly is not everything that Apple needs to do with Yosemite to make it a 100% reliable experience. If you've been sitting on the fence and you're still using Mavericks or even an older version of the OS that you're happy with, I still might recommend sitting on the fence for now with Yosemite until later, unless the features that you're getting with Yosemite, the handoff features that we talked about earlier in the show and some other features are really compelling reasons for you to upgrade, then great. Go ahead, jump on the Yosemite bandwagon, make sure to back up your machine first, obviously, and then migrate from there. But if you are still using an older version of the operating system that you're comfortable with, feel free to stick with it for a while longer. 10.10.1 is certainly a good move in the right direction, fixes some issues that early adopters had. The many millions of Mac users who have upgraded to Yosemite are getting some relief with the problems that they've had. But it's not perfect yet, and it probably won't be for another couple of incremental.
It might never be perfect, Peter.
It'll never be perfect, but I mean,
everybody wants something different. So
everybody, sure, absolutely. But let's face it, 10.94, which came out in June of this year, was the first version of Mavericks that really kind of ironed out most of the issues that people who had already upgraded to Mavericks had. That came more than half a year after Mavericks was released to the general public, which meant that there were millions of folks who suffered with problems in Mavericks prior to 10.94's release. And even 10.94 isn't perfect, as you say, Rene, and as you said, Serenity. There's no such thing as a perfect release, but you want to ameliorate as many of the problems as you have, as you can have too. Bottom line is
time for us to install the beta for Yosemite.
Yeah, the bottom line here is that as long as you've upgraded to Yosemite, I don't have any problem recommending 10.10.1. I think it's a solid update, but it doesn't fix all the problems that people have reported with Yosemite yet. We're still waiting.
I still have nightmares about image preview lag and Mavericks. Sometimes still wake up screaming.
At least mail is not as bad as it was in Mavericks.
No, that was another nightmare. It ate my Mobile Nations account. Like, just everything gone.
Why? Because you write the word cookies in it so much.
Probably.
Maybe. Raisins attacked.
The favorite problem that I have with Yosemite lately, and I don't know if it's just my machine or if this is something that other people have seen as well, but when I go to control click a document, especially on my desktop or whatever, and I select open with, I will get a fetching thing that appears there as it tries to figure out what apps it can map the application or the document to. Drives me crazy.
Yeah, if you just I've learned if you just deselect it and then reselect it, it goes away and loads automatically. But mine's been doing, and it's only been since I think past couple of weeks that it's been doing that. It never did it before that.
The one thing that it fixed for me that I'm really happy about, and I know it's not perfectly fixed and it's not fixed for everyone, and it's certainly not fixed for Rich Siegel's Apple TV, is the Bonjour multiple versions of the same device on the network problem. Because I'd had MacBook Pro 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think Rich had, bathroom Apple TV 2,794. Which raises all sorts of questions about Rich, by the way.
Well, that seems to be a big issue with content or with handoff for some people.
It can be handoff. It can be back to my Mac.
Or not personal hotspot, I think is what.
It's just confusing.
Yeah, it's a Bonjour issue, which means anything that's using Bonjour for Discovery is going to report that.
Yeah, I know, like, since I have, like, phones for testing and whatnot, like, they all get restored from the same backup, so they all end up essentially with the name Allie's iPhone. So, and then when, hotspot pops up, I actually had it freeze my Mac because I must have had, like, 4 or 5 Allie's iPhone booted up.
So that's something different. So, so
the name's confusing.
Yeah. So what it does is it matches your contact, and then it's going to use, if there's no contact name, it's going to use a device name, but if there's a contact name, it's going to use a contact name instead, and because you're always you, it's applying the same name to everything. We're not typical use cases, but it's still something that has to be fixed. But this was, if you went to your Mac, if you went to the Finder and you went to the network attached devices, you would see, MacBook 1, MacBook 2, MacBook 3, MacBook 4, and sometimes you'd have a dozen or more things in the list.
Is that like tied to your Mac address, or?
No, I'll send you the article, but it's a Bonjour bug, and mostly fixed, not fixed on Apple TV yet. Otherwise, the one problem that I'm still not sure is fixed is that when OS X tries to connect with iCloud, it can still beach ball for long periods of time. I haven't had it try to reconnect to iCloud yet, so I haven't seen if it still happens, but that's huge on my list of please fixes. You have to wait 5 minutes for iPhoto to launch. It's not pleasant.
Every couple of days, I just get a pop-up asking me to sign into iCloud on my Mac.
Yeah, mine as well.
It doesn't ever freeze. Just randomly asks.
I get that on one iPhone.
Yeah.
I think on the iPhone it has something to do with backups, because I always seem to wake up to it sometimes, and my backups always seem to trigger at like 3, 4 in the morning, and that seems to be when I get those pop-ups asking me to sign into iCloud.
I think I followed one of your tips, Allie, and just logged out and then logged back in, and it stopped happening.
Yeah.
All right, so interesting on the accessory front, Apple is opening up the Lightning port. Previously, you could be licensed to use the Lightning port, and you'd get a little chip, and you'd be able to use it. But now they're going to let third parties sort of go wild with Lightning ports. So theoretically, you won't need to charge via USB for your Mophie anymore. Mophie can put a straight Lightning pass-through. We'll see all sorts of other stuff.
Which would be awesome if it, we'll see how long it actually takes for accessory makers to input this, as well as if it's similar to the MFI program where they have to register and get special permission to use it. But it would be really nice to be able to start charging things via Lightning.
Yeah, because we won't have to carry 2 cables with us anymore.
Yep. Although I do love my little cable that turns from a Lightning cable into a mini micro USB cable. That thing has saved my bacon on so many occasions.
Just not sure I'm ready for a world where John Moltz only needs Lightning cables.
He needs a new cable now. When I saw that tweet that he made yesterday where he's like, "Oh, congratulations, I have enough Lightning cables." I'm like, this is what happens. Apple is gonna see that and be like, "Oh, the Lightning cable, we don't need it anymore." Introducing the Lightning 2. It's wider again, just because we want to screw with you.
There's this, I don't want to call it a rumor because it's not just a rumor, but that Apple has actually implemented PCI on the communication system inside the iPhone, a PCI architecture. And previously, Apple couldn't use Thunderbolt on iOS devices because there was no PCIe architecture. And Thunderbolt is basically DisplayPort plus PCI. So it's interesting to see where that goes because the problem with the iPhone and iPad is it's still NAND flash only writes at a certain speed. So anything over about between USB 2 and USB 3, the NAND will get saturated far faster than the cable transfer rate. So what benefits there might be, is one thing, but there's some other interesting aspects about being able to chain together tons of accessories. I don't know if we'll ever need it on an iOS device or if the cloud is definitely our future, but things are happening, Serenity. We could replace all of Moltz's cables again.
All with Thunderbolt. Very expensive Thunderbolt.
Very expensive, very thick Thunderbolt that'll make the phones giant and be able to put in more battery again. We've got some questions that need answers. Allie, this one might be for you. This is from Nathan. He wants to know, can I stop all my devices getting notifications for an iTunes family share request? I just want my iPhone to receive them.
I don't know about that because I think that I'm assuming he's talking about like the ask to buy.
Yeah, that's what my guess is.
Yeah, so I know you can stop it on a per device basis, like for different parents and guardians. So only if one person wants to get them, you can disable the ask to buy for the other parent. But I don't think, because I think it just ties to your iCloud and uses whatever setting I'm looking right now.
Can you turn it off in Notification Center on individual devices?
I don't know. Probably. I mean, you can turn off iCloud notifications, I think. So I'm looking right now to see if you can actually disable those.
We will look into this, Nathan, and if we can figure it out, Ali will ninja it up for you.
Yes.
Another question. When you set up your iPhone as new, how do you get your pictures back on the phone? Does iCloud take care of it?
It depends on what you're setting up. So if you have iCloud Photo Library enabled, those photos will pull down from the cloud, which is kind of cool. And your photo stream should be accessible regardless whether or not you have iCloud Photo Library enabled. Your camera roll is backed up under your backups. So if you've backed up to iCloud, then yes, that will be pulled up.
If you're setting up as new, you won't get your backup though.
Well, no. If you're setting up completely as new, yeah. Rather than setting up a new iPhone. But yes.
You'll get your photo stream, but you won't get your camera roll. Correct. If you have iCloud Photo Library enabled, you'll get everything.
Yes.
Have you guys enabled iCloud Photo? I called it Attack of the iClones. The iCloud Photo Library yet?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Mixed feelings right now. I think a lot of it's just bugs. I mean, it's a beta, so you can't really expect too much, but I still am a little... I want to have the option. I know if you favorite things, that actually physically downloads photos to your device, does it not?
I believe so, yeah. Or at least it prioritizes them.
Yeah, so I'm still not... I have issues sometimes if I go to load an older photo, I'm getting errors where it couldn't finish loading the photo. Like it looks like you get that little spinny wheel, it loads about a quarter of the way, and then it tells me there was an error with iCloud Photo Library. So like little bugs like that are irritating, but for the most part, I've disabled it and re-enabled it on other devices. It pulls everything down. I've made sure, picture counts match. It seems to be doing a pretty good job. I think it'll be a lot more pleasant of an experience when I have a Photos app for my Mac that
agreed
unifies things, but
it's a little bit more organization.
Couldn't finish that already.
My big request for iCloud Photo Library is to be able to say, like, these photos I would prefer to not download to my camera roll so that, A, they show up on my Mac when I plug it in and I see image capture, and B, they don't take up all the storage on my Mac or on my iOS device.
Yeah.
Well, you can kind of do that with the optimized photo option, but it's not pick and choose. It's all or nothing.
Exactly, which is frustrating. I would really like to be able to say, like, the last 100 photos keep, the other photos show in like little thumbnails, and then
or even albums. Like, let me choose on an album basis, because then I'll put like specific events in an album, and then that would probably do two things. It would make me organize my photos and be less of a pig about it, and two, it would let me choose what I want on my device. So like if I'm on a plane or somewhere where I don't have cell service, I can still share my photos without relying on them maybe or maybe not being able to pull from iCloud Photo Library.
Exactly.
There was a follow-up question that same questioner wants to know: is there anything he will not be able to recover if he sets up it new? My default answer to this is you will not get anything back. That's the whole point of doing new. You'll be able to sync your contacts, everything on iCloud. You'll be able to pull down your photos, anything specific like that, but all your app data, your game save data.
You'll have to re-download all that.
Yeah, new is new for a reason. It's clean.
I still stand by the fact that the only way to completely and utterly secure game save data is iTunes.
Or if you want to do phone view, you can do it manually, but yeah.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's a process. So.
You can usually get it from an iCloud restore, but it's.
I've lost it.
Yeah.
I've lost it. So.
I
don't trust it.
Even iCloud can't contain all your Candy Crushes, Allie.
That's not me. That's Heather.
Jonathan wants to know any update on iTunes Radio going international. So I think I made a snarky comment on Twitter yesterday, and it was a little bit directed at Apple, a little bit directed at the media coverage. There was a story that Apple was going to make Beats a default app in iOS 9, or at some point in the near future, that it would just come on every iPhone, and that means that Beats would suddenly get hundreds of millions of new installs, and that's completely false because Beats is US only. And there's not hundreds of millions of iOS devices in the US, you know.
I mean, there are, but not everybody is going to subscribe to Beats.
I would almost think they'd just integrate Beats into the music app. That would make more sense.
Yeah, well, I think they're gonna kill radio or incorporate radio in such a way so that it's one big thing, and that's, I suspect, when international listening will come, because there's no point in them trying to negotiate two separate international rates, one for iTunes Radio and one for Beats.
Yeah. I think Beats will be absorbed into the music app. That's what I think will happen.
And does that mean that iTunes Radio is just going to go away?
I think iTunes Radio will become part of Beats. I think that the things that they like about iTunes Radio can be
parts of both.
Beats. Yeah.
So my snark there was directed mostly at U.S. media, who forgets to cover these things as international, because, you know, they absolutely are. iTunes Radio was supposed to quickly propagate, but it went precisely to Australia and stopped. And Beats has a webpage up that says it's going to go international really soon, and to keep checking back, and it's been like that for over a year. And it's highly likely that when Apple and Beats went into negotiations, exactly like you guys said, they deliberately stalled their international negotiations, because they knew they wanted to present something combined and better.
There's
but
a lot
they're really
of
hard to do.
And I think you're exactly right about the licensing. I mean, I think if they could do it short term and not have I think that's a huge complication to have to do licensing twice. It's kind of like doing twice the work for the same outcome.
It's hard to do licensing at all. We've got very few services that are really that international. Most of them have very carefully picked their battles. And, you know, coming into Canada by itself, Amazon still isn't here. Amazon said we'd have Amazon MP3 in 2009, I'd like to say 2010. It's 2014. They're nowhere to be seen.
They lied to you.
Giant liars. But yeah, it's not easy, and I'm sure the Beats deal has not complicated, but at least delayed it. And at some point we will have a magical Beat service that has both radio and subscription, and Taylor Swift hates both of them.
Yeah, Taylor Swift or not, I think that's the best solution, and I think that there's a lot of good things that I like about iTunes Radio that Beats doesn't do. Some of the music discovery there is better in some genres, while Beats is better in others. So I think it makes sense for them to take music discovery from both and kind of mesh them together, because, I mean, I flip between both of them depending on what I'm listening to. So I wouldn't really want them to kill either. So
well, the Beats is curation, right? That's their big claim to fame.
It is, yes. And they have a lot of really great playlists, and then in other genres they have some really not so great playlists that need some work, but then iTunes does really well with those. So I think it depends on what you really listen to, but I think both services have their merits, and I think to take the best from both and just keep them in one place would make the most sense.
For sure.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our wonderful Q&A round this week. If you want to ask us a question, you can send it to podcast@imore.com anytime. You can put it up on Twitter, just hashtag it #AskIMore, one word, or you can put it in a comment to a previous show, and we will make sure we find all of those. We did the show a little bit early because we have holiday travels to get to. We'll be doing it early next week as well. We'll be doing it on Wednesday instead of Thursday, because apparently America has to get its turkey on. I've been told this is very important.
Very much so.
Yes, it's still egregious that, you know, when we get Thanksgiving in Canada, you guys get Columbus Day. When you get Thanksgiving, we get nothing.
Sorry, Rene.
Canada.
Take a Canada Day.
We're blamed for in-app purchase in games. We're blamed for, you know, Thanksgiving. It's just not an easy life.
It's all your fault.
We are typically
here. Trudeau Day or something.
We have Trudeau Airport.
Yeah.
We are typically here on Thursdays. That would be at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. That's the best way to enjoy the show, because you get to ask us these kinds of questions and interact with us and correct us and yell at us in real time. Otherwise, you can find the show at any time on YouTube at youtube.com/iMoreVideo, or you can find it in iTunes or the RSS podcast fetcher of your choice. I'd like to thank every one of you for joining us today. I'd like to thank Ali, Peter, and Ren. Ali, where can we find you on the interwebs?
I'm on iMore every day, and then I am at iMuggle on all of the things social.
What about you, Peter?
I'm also at iMore, of course, and on Flarg, at Flarg, Flargh, on the social things.
Nice. Ren?
And I, too, am at iMore, although I'll be gone for a little bit because I'm going to go down to Disney World and do a lot of roller skating.
So jealous.
And then I am at Saturn at all of the things.
Nice. I am at Rene Ritchie. I will not be having Thanksgiving. I will not be going to Disney World, but I will be here with the rest of you. I will be here on Thursday. I will make it my mission to give you a very Canadian Thanksgiving. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to the community, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. I've got to do 2 quick ads. You guys are welcome to drop off if you have things to do, though.
Unfortunately, I think I'm going to disappear so I can finish packing.
Fly, Ren, fly.
Yeah, I'm gonna go write all the things on my cloud keychain.
All right.
Good luck with the
Bye,
unreads
guys.
tonight.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Safe.